study today is going to give us an overview of conscious growth on our planet as well as within our own personal development. And I want to share with you, in fact, I'm excited to share with you, a tool that has been the most useful one that I have found in all of my searching and study. A tool that, however, is not widely known. In fact, I would be surprised if anyone in the room had heard about it before now, unless you've talked to me. And I believe that if we, as I suggested in the meditation, do not try to get it all at once, but take it bit by bit, it will augment our understanding of our own personal journey in this lifetime and help make sense out of other people's journeys that may seem quite mysterious to us. Why do those people act that way? What is going on? Well, this starts with a story of a young psychologist, and no, this is not my autobiography, of a young psychologist in the 1950s named Clare Graves. And he, like most of us, was an avid searcher of the answers and truth and what makes people tick. And so he read the works of the pundits of the time, the psychologists, the philosophers, and each system that was presented seemed to make a lot of sense in and of itself. Each system would give you that, oh, I get it, aha, this is what life is about. This is what motivates people and why they operate the way they do. Except it never seemed to apply everywhere, with everyone. Within a certain circumscribed world, it seemed to hold true. And it would be very useful in helping to understand people and predict what they were going to do and what they should do next and so on. But nothing seemed universal. It would always break down. And then we were back to the beginning, trying to figure out, well, what applies to everyone, everywhere? Well, he decided that he would get answers himself to this that were more satisfying and more fulfilling, or he would take up something a little more concrete and understandable like auto mechanics or something, where this nut goes into this bolt and this. So he did something rather, I want to say, revolutionary in the study of human behavior, and that is he asked people, lots of people, wide-scale studies of people, about what they thought life was about, what they believed, what motivated it, what made them tick. Now, of course, when you do something like that, you get a wide jumble of data and answers, and then, of course, how do you make sense out of that? And here again, we all take our bias into analyzing anything. As we know from our study of creative thought, if this is what I'm believing, people doing research, it's been shown, tend to prove their hypotheses, because they interpret the data that way. And so, trying to guard against that as best he could, he very broadly divided the data that came in into two categories. It seemed to be those people who believed that life was about taking the bull by the horns, making opportunities work for you, a very yang or assertive approach to being successful in life. And the other group of people who were more, it's important to go with the flow, to learn how to fit in, to learn how to adapt oneself, not push the river too much. So there was an assert self group of people and an adapt self group of people. That seemed to be two major themes that came through. Well, mildly interesting, but nothing to write a bestseller about. So they looked at the data further. Now, within this data, they saw that the group of express self people, there were the people who said it's important to express self at all costs. Yes, people can get hurt or upset, but that's life, survival of the fittest. You've got to go for the gusto. Do it. And then there were people who said, yes, you have to express yourself and take control of your life, but you do it in a logical, rational way that doesn't create too much havoc and somehow manipulates life and the circumstances to your needs. Okay? Also, looking at the adapt self people, there was the group that said it's important to adapt yourself to a higher order, to a greater than yourself law or system, be it God or whatever it is. It's important to find out what those universal principles are and conform to them for happiness, be the good person. And then there were people who said, yeah, it's important to go with the flow and be in harmony, but it's not about a higher order, it's about other people. It's about fitting in and learning how to harmonize and to share with the rest of humanity. And our challenge on Earth is how to get along and share the resources of the Earth with each other. All right, now you might be sitting here thinking, well, there's some truth to all of those. Or you might even recognize that, I've thought that way at different times in my life. Well, hang on to that because it's probably true. It's probably true. They went further in studying the data, and again, somewhat interesting, but nothing I'm going to fall off the chair with. Okay, lots of studies divide people up into categories. So what? Well, it became more interesting when they did longitudinal studies. And two things came from that. First of all, people do not change their basic philosophy and values in life very quickly. It's not like you give the test one week and people are this way, and then the next week they're another way, and the third week they're a different way. These tend to be relatively enduring values and things that people base their actions on. They became the backdrop for why people acted the way they did and how they justified their life. But the most astounding thing was that when they did change their beliefs, they tended to do it in a predictable order. That it was not random, willy-nilly, back and forth, but there tended to be a progression in the development of belief systems. Well, I tuned into this when I was an intern at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C., which was part of the National Mental Health Institute complex, and which, of course, was attached to the National Institute of Health. And this research was going on worldwide at the time. So data was coming in from all various sources about conscious growth. And what was being discovered, that this was not simply a change in one's attitude, a change in how, one turned on Oprah one day and all of a sudden decided to think completely differently about life, that it affected one's physiology, that there were hormonal shifts, brain chemistry changes as people changed their belief systems. And it was not something that the belief system just influenced one area of their life, but then they believed totally different elsewhere. It tended to be an entire revolution. Yeah.
But these revolutions were predictable in themselves, they were happening.
Yes. That individuals, in fact groups of individuals, would change their beliefs, and they would do it over time, but they would do it in a predictable direction. Then more data came in on the fact that people who held prevailing beliefs would learn best because their brain chemistry and their physiology, things were set up in a certain balance within them. They tend to learn best according to different systems of learning. The old idea is, what's the best way to teach kids? False question. What kids? In what circumstances? What are they ready for? So all of these books on educational theory, things that would be behaviorist, things that would be laissez-faire, all of the different models of education seem to make sense when you applied them to the right people going through the right stages of evolution. That's how they came about. The theory got constructed and validated on that group of people because it really worked for them. However, when people moved on from that and were no longer set up that way, then something else was important for learning. Now, we come together here at Transformations and gravitate towards a certain way to learn and grow. No surprise to you, you have probably taken some of this out and tried to share it with others, and it's not something that everyone tunes into. An experiential form of learning requires a certain setup in your consciousness to be effective. And it's not just a matter of unfamiliarity. There are some people who've never been here before, who don't know any of us, who would walk in the room, sit down, and feel quite at home, and we'd feel at home with them. It would take about 2 seconds. And other people who would walk in the room, look around, feel uncomfortable, and so would we. Because how they looked at the situation, how they were assessing it, how they were taking it in, how they would exude a certain energy that we'd experience, and so would they. It just wouldn't fit. Now, I'm making this sound, for the beginning purposes, very cut and dried, like you're either here or there or there. Of course that's not true. The model of growth is that when we're in transition, we often have a foot in one world and a foot in the other. And we're going to talk about that. And in truth, that's where many of us are. We took an inventory at the beginning of the year called The Way I See It, which was your self-report on your belief systems. Next week, after we've studied this somewhat today and some more next week, we're going to look at how you rated yourself according to these belief systems. And it may, ding, turn some lights on as to, I see where I'm coming from and why it's been so difficult to get here and why I'm attracted to go back there. Because it's often in the transition that we quite judiciously and intelligently look for support for a new way of living. In fact, it's important to do that because the environment that we put ourselves in says a lot about what's being nurtured and what's being fostered in terms of our belief systems and our values. Now, this had real implications for human service and, well, in almost every field. Take education, as I just pointed out. Being able to tell where a child is at and being able to teach them in a way that they can understand and learn and grow from, and then, should they show that potential to grow further, we have the tools then to help them make the consciousness shift and to grow. And that can be done quite lovingly and intelligently. And it is done by educators who have a feel for that. However, what we also know is that in whatever work you are doing, if you are not being nurtured yourself at your own level of growth, that it starts to grate on you. So it's important to have the right teacher for the right students. It's not that every teacher will be satisfied passing out M&Ms if we're working with a token economy, a model of very primitive learning. When I worked at the county many years ago, they were just setting up a ward for autistic kids and a system of gradated learning based on rewards for each step along the way. And if you would look at that from a humanistic psychology point of view, you'd say, they're being treated like animals. This is terrible. You just love them and give them enough space and they will all blossom and grow. Well, that wasn't happening. That's been done for centuries. Someone who had the caring to see that they had the skill to pick up the end of the shoelace but couldn't get it through the eyelet would then find out what would assist them in that process and use that system of rewards and, in some cases, disincentives or punishments so that their brain chemistry and their cognitive abilities could learn and grow and build one stage upon the next. Am I making sense? The far? Okay. Well, take this into the field of human services. People who really took this theory and worked with it beyond what this original trailblazer, Claire Graves, could develop, have applied it in very large fields. For example, the government of South Africa hired Don Beck and Christopher Cowan to assist them in the transition from apartheid to another form of government. If you understand how the psychology of the groups work, you can do that in a way which it's not too abrupt. It's not like all of a sudden you're imposing an entire different system and you do not help people grow into it or through it.
Isn't that what happened in Russia?
Yes. In fact, given that you begin to work with and see how this system works, you will look at the newspaper quite differently and see, the development of conscious growth on our planet and why this war is happening there and why the school system is going under there. So it's not just for smug analysis or understanding. It's, I believe, a tool that gives us an opportunity to be more effective in our own personal journey and in helping others in life.